Okay, on to reading 1, and we have a matching headings, tea and the Industrial Revolution, and true false not given. So I would probably go with matching headings first. You'll really get to know where everything is if you do it that way. So we're going to look at our 3-phase strategy again. Phase 1, check first, sometimes second sentences, if the first sentence is quite short. This is a slow step, go through all of the headings. Right. Ellen McFarlane, you never need to even look at that, remember, has spent decades wrestling with the enigma, the mystery of the Industrial Revolution. But really, this is such a short paragraph so that you may as well read on and try and see if you can get it. So this is a good example of where you don't just stop at the end of the first sentence. You might as well continue. And questions. Why did this world-changing birth happen in Britain? Why did it happen in Britain? And why did it strike at the end of the 18th century? So the main things here are Industrial Revolution, why in Britain, why 18th century? The search for the reasons, nothing about increase in population. Fear of unemployment, no. Cities in Japan, no. Time and place of Industrial Revolution seems interesting. Holland, France, China, no. Drinking habits in Britain, no. 2 keys okay, that's possible. Conditions required, no. Comparisons with Japan. So we're really just looking at that. The time and place of the Industrial Revolution. 2 keys to Britain's Industrial Revolution. But take a look at it. Is it time and place or is it 2 keys? This is where it happened, and this is when it happened. So it's definitely time and place. So I think that one you could have gotten straight off in phase 1. So A then is 4. Right, paragraph B. McFarlane compares the puzzle. The puzzle is this mystery of why and why to a combination lock. Now this is such a short sentence and he's comparing it to something else, so I would read on and read this sentence as well. There are about 20 different factors, and all of them need to be present before the revolution can happen. So we're still on about why it happened. Increase in population, no. Industrial unemployment, no. Cities in Japan, no. Holland, France and China, no. Drinking habits in Britain, 2 keys to Britain's Industrial Revolution. No, he said 20 factors. Conditions required for industrialization, maybe. Comparisons with Japan. So for this one, really, it can't really be any of these other ones. What are they asking here? 20 factors which need to be present so that the revolution can happen. You can really delete all these other ones. It can only be this one, the conditions which need to be present, the factors which need to be present before industrialization can happen. It's slightly difficult, but the thing is, there's all of these other ones. You can quite quickly see that it's none of these. So I think it's okay to go with this one in phase 1. All right, let's look at C. The missing factors he proposes. What are the missing factors? You see it over here. Often it's a good idea to just look back and see what they're talking about in the new one. Historians are convinced there are 1 or 2 missing factors that you need to open the lock. The missing factors. This word "the," it means that we're talking about something that was introduced already. We also see something similar over here, this population. It means that this paragraph begins with something that they spoke about in the previous paragraph, and that will be an important piece of information. So, because he says "the," we know that he mentioned the missing factors somewhere here, and they mentioned them over there. So notice those linking back between paragraphs. It can be very useful. So the missing factors are to be found in almost, I think this should be every kitchen cupboard. It's a bit short. Let's try another sentence. Tea and beer, two of the nation's favorite drinks fueled the revolution. It gave energy to the revolution. Anything that we can see there? Increase in population, no. Fear of unemployment, no. Japan, no. Holland, France, China, no. Drinking habits, they mentioned tea and beer, so maybe. Two keys to Britain's industrial revolution. Japan, no. So I don't know if they mentioned changes in drinking habits. We could look later, but two keys. They talk about factors earlier, conditions, and here they just call it keys to Britain's industrial revolution. Remember, here we're talking about the industrial revolution in Britain. So these two missing factors are actually over there, two missing factors. So we know that there's two. We know that there's two. They mentioned two over there. Fueled the revolution. They were keys to the revolution. So once again, we could probably get it from the first two sentences. Once again, if you look at all of the others, it can't be those. They may be drinking habits, but it's this two keys that really gave it away. So again, I think phase 1, we can delete this one. We can choose this one. Right, let's look at D. Also, when I see these big paragraphs, I want to kind of leave them for phase 2 because there's a lot of information. So let's look. He wondered for a long time how the revolution came about. So how the revolution came about. Increase in population, no. Unemployment, Japan, Holland, France, China, no. So let's skip that one. This population burst, again, as I mentioned earlier, that means the population burst, this is a population explosion, is important information. So just remember that. Seemed to happen at just the right time to provide labor, that means work, people to work, for the Industrial Revolution. There, increase in population, but now increase in population is not this one. This population burst means they're talking about increase in population there. So I'll just remember that for later. This might be about the increase in population. But I don't see anything about, where are we? Provide labor for the Industrial Revolution. This is about providing people to work. Maybe unemployment, but maybe not. Cities in Japan, Holland, drinking habits, Japan, no. So I'll skip that one. Macfarlane looked to Japan, which was also developing large cities at the same time and also had no sanitation. So there's Japan. Looked to Japan. Why did he look to Japan? Again, good example of linking between paragraphs. Some authors do it a lot, some authors don't do it at all. This writer does it a lot. So we just want to know what they're talking about here. What caused this? It dropped again. What is it? The mortality rate began to rise again, then it dropped again. What caused this? So this is all about mortality rate. Anyway, he looks to Japan, but the problem is, I see two with Japan, development of cities in Japan, comparisons with Japan. Looked to means he is trying to find information in Japan to solve this problem. This information over here, it's just kind of extra information. It's not the main sentence. So I'll skip it for now, but it could be that one or it could be that one. And finally, if T is a factor, why didn't Japan forge ahead with a revolution of its own? So the answer to this question is the topic of the paragraph. Remember that. When the writer asks questions, you must find the answer to the question. The answer to the question is important. Anyway, again, it's Japan and there are two Japans, so I'll probably skip it. So that's fine. We found 1, 2, 3 in phase 1. And let's move on to phase 2 then. Phase 2 is we're going to look at it in a little bit more detail and see if we can see anything. Linking language, structural language, positive or negative, tenses, repeated, and numbers and dates. Probably these two are this one and this one are the most useful of these 5, the repetition and the linking language. So we're going to tackle paragraph D. Remember with paragraph D, he talked about this population burst. So he wondered how it came about. There was one interesting factor. So what was that interesting factor? Between these two, the population was static. But, now the but, remember, introduces important information. Then there was a burst in population growth. This population burst. So I'm starting to see some repetition here. The mortality rate, it's an important word to know. This means the death rate. The death rate decreased. It was by half. And then there were 4 possible causes. That's good linking language. 4 causes. Here's 1, unlikely. Here's 2, but no. Here's 3, change in environmental, but they keep on answering no, question, no, question, no. The only option left was food, but also no. So the food actually got worse. So they couldn't explain this population burst. So all of this is trying to explain why this population burst happened, and that's what this paragraph is about. The search for the reasons, trying to explain why they gave 4 possible causes: increase in population, burst in population, which is again repeated over there. So I'm quite happy about 1. We can just check. Unemployment, no. Cities in Japan, Holland, France, China. Drinking habits, no. Japan lead to the answer, no. So quite confident about that one. Great. This population burst seems to happen at the right time to provide labor. Now, do we see anything there? We see a but over there. In the late century, a tax was introduced on malt. This is like linking language. You should view it as linking language. A tax was introduced, the ingredient of beer. So the poor turned to water and gin. They turned to. And the mortality rate rose again. Then it dropped again. So after this but, we see the poor people were drinking beer, but then they changed to water and gin. Here he says we drank beer. The people, he means the people drank beer. But, very important but, then they made tax on beer and they changed to water. All of this is a but over there about disease. Doesn't really tell us much. Let's see if there's anything about that. Unemployment. I remember there was something about labor. I don't see fear of unemployment though. Nothing about fear of unemployment. Japan, no. Holland, France, China, no. So it must be this one. Changes in drinking habits. It was given by this but over here. We drank beer, but then they put tax on and the poor turned to water. So they started to drink water and gin. Probably that one was a bit difficult. Maybe it could have been in phase 3. So let's skip that. But actually we've only got 3 paragraphs left. I think we can move to phase 3. Let's just keep on in phase 2 and just skim this and see if there's anything you can find. We're looking at Japan. Why is he looking at Japan? To find out what caused this change in drinking habits. No, to find out what caused the mortality rate to drop. But you have to read quite a lot. I don't see linking language or anything. And same thing over there. Alright, so probably into phase 3 now. But I still feel pretty confident that E is the changes in drinking habits. Even if we read it a little bit closer. Right. So, one thing that you can do is to try and delete the tricks like this. Holland, France and China. It's obviously just a trick. You can quickly, maybe you saw it earlier. It was there. And we've already done that one. So that means that this one is just they call it a red herring. It's trying to trick you. If you can delete those, if you see them, that will be great. So this first one, we're comparing to Japan. We're looking at Japan for information. You just have to read quite carefully and you have to decide, is it this, is it this, is it this? This is a red herring because they've taken that information, but that is just extra information. They're trying to confuse you because they know that you're looking at the first city. What you'd have to do is read it quite carefully. It's a very confusing paragraph, and I would actually skip it. That's the most difficult one. If T is the factor, why didn't Japan go ahead? Even though 17th century Japan had large cities, high literacy rates, futures market, you have to read the sentence quite carefully. Japan had 1, large cities, high literacy rates, and a futures market. So that's a list of 3 things. Even though it had these 3 things, it turned its back on work-based revolution by giving up labor-saving devices such as animals, afraid that they would put people out of work. So can you remember anything about afraid, work, giving up labor-saving devices? Fear, afraid, and work. So that is the development of cities in Japan. Please notice it's definitely not this, because this is one part of a list of 3 things. They won't take a heading from a list of 3 things. So it's not that one. Comparisons lead to the answer. Probably not. It's the fear of unemployment. These are starting to get a little bit difficult now, so you can be forgiven if you want to just have a guess and see if you can find it. Development of cities, comparisons with Japan. I'm quite sure it's not development of cities because that's just trying to confuse you. That's extra information. So then the last one must be 9. Alright, so yes, it started to get a bit confusing at the end here, these 2 paragraphs, I think. But you could have gotten a good 6 out of 8, 6 out of 7 there if you had a lucky guess. Right, let's look at our true, false, not given. Okay, so I'll just go through them quickly and look at the target language. I won't do circles, I'll just highlight it in pink over here. The transport system not suitable, industry 18th century. So the key here, was it suitable or was it not suitable? The target language is an adjective, which we often see with true, false, not given. T and B both help to prevent dysentery in Britain. Now this one is a bit tricky because it could be on both. It might be that only one of them helped or neither of them helped. It could be on prevent. So I'm going to leave that one. It's not clear, the target language. Roy Porter disagrees with his findings. It can only be this. Does he agree or does he disagree? Or don't we know? There was a reduction in population in Britain. Reduction. Was it a reduction? Was it an increase? Did it stay the same? Don't we know? People in Britain used to make beer at home. Could be anything there. I'm going to skip it. Tax on malt indirectly caused a rise in the death rate. So here it could be directly or indirectly, or it could be a rise or a decrease. Alright, so let's look at the scanning language and start with them. China's transport system was not suitable for industry 18th century. So I'll scan for China, I'll scan for 18th century. We didn't really read this one much, but we saw maybe with a quick scan, China is over there, 18th century. 18th century is there. Anyway, what did they say about China? Transport system not suitable for industry. This is the only thing. China had many of these factors. I don't see China anywhere else. China is nowhere else. China had many of these factors. China's transport system not suitable. Clear, not given. They often start with a not given. Nothing there about China's transport system suitable or not suitable. Tea and beer, I remember where we saw that in that paragraph. Both helped to prevent dysentery in Britain. We want those two factors. Where are they? Yeah. Tea and beer fueled the revolution. Properties of tannin, which is in tea, and the hops in beer, allowed urban community to flourish at close quarters without succumbing, here's our keyword, dysentery. So basically we need to read that whole sentence. So, this in tea and the hops in beer allowed cities to flourish at close quarters, don't worry, without succumbing to disease such as dysentery. Now you have to kind of guess what succumbing means, and it means without falling or getting ill or dying from. So they did not die from diseases such as dysentery. Remember, they're talking about beer as a positive thing here. The whole thing is that tea and beer fueled the revolution. It helped the revolution. So it's tea and beer are in a positive light here. So tea and beer prevented disease such as dysentery. Tea and beer helped to prevent dysentery in Britain. Definitely true. Roy Porter disagrees with Macfarlane's findings. Roy Porter is over here. Macfarlane's case has been strengthened by support from Roy Porter, who recently wrote a favorable appraisal of his research. His is Macfarlane. So there's support, that means Roy Porter supported Macfarlane's, and his writing was favorable. Both of these are positive words, supported and favor. So that means he agrees. He does not disagree. So that is false. There was a reduction in population in Britain. Let's find 1740. Remember, we talked about an increase in population. Where's 1740? Between then and then, the population was static. It stayed the same. But then there was a burst in population. Then means after 1740. A burst, an increase, not a decrease. It did not reduce. Quite a clear false. People in Britain used to make beer at home. Maybe find home. People in Britain make beer. I remember in this paragraph he says they drank beer. The English, maybe you can say that's people in Britain. Anything about home. So it's not here, not here, not here, not here. Anything here about home. Where did they make the beer? Where did they make the beer? You can't see where they made the beer. Maybe skip that one, come back to it, because it's a not given. They're always more difficult. The tax, I remember tax on malt indirectly caused a rise in the death rate. We know this is going to be probably true, because we haven't done two truths. The tax was introduced, so then the poor stopped drinking beer and they drank water and gin, and the mortality rate began to rise. So the tax indirectly, it didn't directly cause it. The tax caused the change in drinking habits. The change in drinking habits caused the mortality rate to rise. So it was indirectly, and yes, the death rate, the mortality rate, it's the same thing, did rise, and as we thought that was going to be true. All right, really, I think you can get 6 out of 6 there. You can get a lot of these, 5 or 6, so you can score very well on this. I think you should score 10, 11 or 12 on this. It's not a particularly difficult passage 1. Right, let's look at passage 2.